What's up everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Now this is no lie, one of the first memories I had growing up was Channel 44's Saturday Sushi Cinema. And on that channel they would always play Godzilla movies, and I loved those freaking movies. So it kinda goes without saying, but I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and when I found out the original company that made the Godzilla films, Toho, was gonna be kind of rebooting the series, I was so excited. And then I was completely bummed that it wouldn't be coming to America. And then I was excited all over again when I found out that it was actually coming to America in limited theaters in October of 2016, which that bummed me out again because I wasn't able to make it. So I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with this film from the time that it was going to be released. And now, after waiting forever to get my hands on a copy of this, I finally have it and I'm going to review this damn film, even though it's a little bit late. So now I know that there have been several opinions about this film already, and people have reviewed it, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on the film and whether or not I feel that it was totally worth it and totally worth the wait. So finally, let's take a closer look at Shin Godzilla, or as we know it in North America, Godzilla Resurgence. Now, full disclosure here guys, I purposely stayed away from every review, every commentary, and anything that's ever been said about this film because I knew I wasn't going to watch it for a long time and I didn't want my review to be influenced by any of that stuff. I wanted to go in blind and just see what I got out of the film. Now first, I do have to talk about how much of a departure this is from traditional Godzilla films or kaiju films in general, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, I do have to preface that statement with a little bit of context so that you can understand why I think this film is actually very brilliant. If you go into this film with the expectation of watching a traditional kaiju film, like let's say Pacific Rim, then you might be a little bit disappointed. If, however, you understand the satire and the political statements that are being made in this film, in that context you'll see why this film is actually very intelligent. It's pretty clear that the film is kind of exploring the criticism and, in fact, at times an indictment of the Japanese government and their somewhat lackluster response in the wake of natural disasters, particularly the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and the subsequent tsunami which really ravaged the island. In fact, much of the terrifying imagery that we see at the beginning of the film is incredibly and almost eerily similar to those scenes that we saw on CNN when the tsunami originally hit in 2011. Just like the original 1954 Godzilla film, Godzilla really is a metaphor for the proliferation of nuclear power and the use of nuclear weapons. This is especially poignant when we put it in the context of 2011's Fukushima nuclear disaster in the wake of the tsunami. While the original film was a sobering look at the horrors of a nuclear holocaust, this version chooses to explore the theme of crisis management and how a government may be ill-equipped to handle these emerging crises. Now, this is going to sound really strange, but the first 20 or 30 minutes of this film are absolutely fascinating, and what we have is a bunch of bureaucrats and leaders and politicians all sitting in a boardroom trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do about this crisis that's happening in seemingly Tokyo Bay. And it just shows the level of incompetence at times that bureaucracy can have on an emerging crisis. The funny thing is that I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this, but I actually found these scenes in these boardrooms very invigorating. And one of the reasons that I say that is because it was really kind of true to life in how politicians and emergency management agencies handle crises. We also see, and it showcases a very important part of the government bureaucracy and how sometimes it can actually be an impediment during a crisis. I mean, there are aspects of this film that are downright infuriating and really frustrating when we see that every order is handed down and has to go through 5 channels of people before it's actually ever executed. There's also a couple of Easter eggs in here, and if you're an anime fan, particularly of Neon Genesis Evangelion, you'll understand what the music is playing in these boardrooms, particularly when there's an angel attack, and I thought that was really cool. It provided a little levity in an otherwise somber film. The cinematography in this film is very impressive and very well done. I love those panoramic shots of Japan. It just adds to the overall realism of this crisis. Now, it does have two extremes. There are very close shots of everyday objects, and then you have very broad shots of basically vistas in the landscape, but it was done very well. I especially like the angles and the perspective. Because it was shot from the perspective of a passerby or somebody who's trying to survive this crisis, Godzilla looks enormous, and I think that was done very effectively. I like to think of it a lot in terms of the perspective of something that we saw in Cloverfield, minus the shaky cam so you're not all nauseated, and this is done very effectively. This version of Godzilla was freaking awesome to me, especially his attributes. Basically, the way that he's introduced is amazing, and you know what? He's got a couple new tricks up his sleeve, which was freaking awesome, guys. Now, they didn't show Godzilla a lot, but when he was on screen, he was freaking amazing. So in my opinion, this movie was well worth the wait, and it's actually a surprise to me. I thought it was just going to be another kaiju film or a traditional Godzilla film. What ended up being is a lot more introspective, a lot more self-reflective, a lot more satirical, and a lot more political thought went into this film. It also serves as a clear and powerful message, and a warning to politicians and leaders alike, that they need to be accountable for their actions, and if they screw up, they need to own it. But ultimately, what I really took away from this film, and something that I really was appreciative of, is that despite the chaos and the devastation, this film really is about hope, and the resilience of the Japanese people to rebuild against insurmountable odds. And that's a powerful message, guys. Alright everybody, so that's my official review of Shin Godzilla, or known in the United States as Godzilla Resurgence. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.